Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello listeners, you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're in Big Little Small Talk, that segment where we go out and we talk to interesting people in the community. You may remember, I think it was about 12 months ago, I came out and I spoke to Carol and Joe, who are a big part of the Parkinson's Disease Association here in Toowoomba. Carol Chalmers is an incredibly organised woman who seems to be part of everything and organising things. And we're coming up on the 11th of April to World Parkinson's Day, and I wanted to catch up with them and see where they're at and catch up with some other members. So welcome back to Big Little Small Talk. You're my only people that I've ever had back, Carol and Joe.
Oh, thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Now, it's probably been about 12 months, I think, since I saw you last time. So how are things travelling, Joe, with your Parkinson's disease?
I'm 12 months older. The disease has progressed. My speech is not nearly as fluent as it used to be. My balance is not what it used to be. My thinking is probably not what it used to be. Carol can beat me in any of the board games that we play.
Not always.
Well,
Not always.
A lot of the time, far more than when we started off doing it.
Tell me about the board games that you play. Is that part of your therapy, or is that for fun, or is that both?
I suppose it's both. I mean, it's a therapy for both of us.
What board games do you play that really exercise your mind?
Rummy Cub.
Yes. And Upwards, which is a bit quicker and faster than Scrabble, because we do it each night. So we do one of those. So we do an English-based, word-based one, or a maths, no, it's not really maths, it's just a thinking game. And then we also do a session of letters and numbers, that old show that was on TV. And we're both much improved. We've been doing it now for about 8 years at least, every night virtually. With a sit down and have nibbles and a drink and play some games before we have dinner. Yeah.
Was that something that you always did, or was that since Joe's diagnosis?
Since the diagnosis.
Yes, that's right, since the diagnosis.
And you had read, I would imagine, that doing things like that were going to be critical in terms of trying to stave off the disease?
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same with all people getting older. I think the more you use your brain and extend it, the easier it becomes to keep those skills as you get older. So not just because of Parkinson's, but that's why we got started. But it's good for everyone, I think.
Carol, from your perspective, what are the changes that you've noticed in Joe's demeanour and in terms of the Parkinson's creeping along over the last 12 months?
Well, I think because it affects the speech and a little bit of the thinking. The speech isn't just about talking, it's about trying to come in on conversations and feel that the people are still on the same topic while you've got ideas you want to put forward, but by the time Joe can say them, quite often the conversation's moved on. So sometimes I feel I sort of observe Joe becoming a little bit more isolated in social situations. So we really do try to get out and see people and talk with people. But, and also with Joe's mobility, he's using a wheelie walker all the time now, rather than just when he was out in uncertain conditions of where he was walking or whatever, but he uses it in the house now. So, I mean, everything is sort of noticeably to me an advancing of the Parkinson's disease, yes.
Incrementational. And if we could just recap, Joe, tell me about the work that you did before you retired.
Well, I was a nurse. I worked for Queensland Health for 40-odd years. the last 20 years, I was a nurse educator. Fairly boring, humdrum.
And had you had much knowledge of Parkinson's yourself?
Almost nil. I knew pictures from the textbook, I would recognise it. But no, I really didn't know much in the way of useful information.
And I know that you two are very involved in the Parkinson's Society, do we call it that? Support group here. And tell me, for some of the listeners, because I have had some feedback after the first time I interviewed you about people who have Parkinson's or one of their loved ones have Parkinson's, and they found it very useful. You talked about the things that you do. Tell me about, it's got a great name, it's Parkinson Songs, your choir group.
Well, it wasn't my idea.
It came up at one of the meetings, I think, from one of the members who heard that there were choirs around the world for people with Parkinson's to help them exercise their voice, use their voice as much as they could to extend the time that before it becomes what we refer to sometimes as a mouse voice for people with Parkinson's. And so we thought, well, we'll start this choir. It was quite difficult to get it started, to find volunteers to take it and everything like that.
Because none of us knew anything about music.
No, that's right.
We couldn't conduct a choir ourselves.
Anyway, the USQ came to the rescue for us with Melissa Forbes out there putting us in touch with a couple of people, and we started the choir. It started off, got involved in a research program straight away, Sing to Beat Parkinson's, which was a worldwide program. And then we've kept going. We've now grown, numbers are always 30 plus, 30 to 40 who come along to the choir 4 weeks on and 2 weeks off each week. And we even had a coup a couple of weeks ago when we managed to get Jonathan Welsh from Choir of Hard Knocks. He came along and took our choir for an hour and a quarter, which was quite wonderful. Yeah, so...
What was the song that you sang with Jonathan?
Well, we sang a few. We sang Wellerman, which is a wailing sea shanty. We sang
Call and Respond. I love the sea shanty.
And then we sang Raindrops Keep Falling on Your Head.
That's right. Yeah.
And then one of our favourites is Sunrise Sunset from Fiddler on the Roof.
Tell me about the process of getting this fellow to come. Was that you, Carol?
It was just by accident, actually. He was running a session at the Empire, or through the Empire Theatre. And it was an all-day session, and few people were interested but couldn't manage with Parkinson's on a full-day basis. So I just rang and asked whether there was any possibility of us, just sort of anyone slipping in and just listening for a while. And the lady at the Empire said, I'll talk to Jonathan about it, but just leave it with me. And she spoke to Jonathan, and he offered to come up the day before, stay overnight and take the Empire Theatre on the Saturday, and on the Friday afternoon came and did our choir for us. Look, honestly, it was just absolutely mind-boggling.
He brought out the best in us.
Yeah, he certainly brought out the best in us. Look, we have wonderful leaders, and they do a great job with us all the time. But the leaders were as thrilled as we were to be part of a choir that Jonathan was out the front of, because he does it every day of his life virtually, and he's just got music in his soul, and he just seems to be able to. It's just a singing environment, and everyone responded just wonderfully well.
Wow, kudos to Jonathan, I tell you. Do you know whether he had ever done anything with Parkinson's people before, Joe?
So far as I know, he hadn't.
Yes, he did mention that he had worked with, I'm not sure whether he said Parkinson's or not, but of course he's worked with, people who are on the street and people with, obviously depression and anxiety and I think he'd worked with some people with perhaps Alzheimer's as well. But it is, and drug and alcohol issues. So it's something that he's, very passionate about, actually.
So let's just go back to, you said about the mouse voice. Tell me what happens with that, Joe.
My voice gets quiet. I've got to shout to ensure you can hear me. And Carol's always telling me, speak up, speak up. It just gets quieter and quieter.
And it's harder and harder to make the volume, isn't it? Because
it is.
It's
quite an effort to get a loud voice to project.
Yes.
Is that quite a common symptom of Parkinson's? Yes. The mouse voice.
Yes.
And I know last time I was here, you told me, and all three groups of people that I spoke to said a very similar thing, and I just can't remember the is it game face?
It was the facial features, yes. The mask-like face.
And tell me about that, Joe.
There's just the muscles don't move. I do have a bit of a grin sometimes. I can manage a bit of a grin, but really my facial expression remains the same.
Right. And I read that it's often how people know that it might be one of the first symptoms. Is that what happened in your case, Carol?
Yes, well, that was certainly, I couldn't put my finger on it. I just knew that Joe wasn't my Joe anymore. Like, the responses to me were not the same, and I just couldn't work out what it was. And then after the diagnosis came, and after I started reading about it, it just clicked with me of all of the things that, were making me misread Joe in communication, because he thinks he's communicating with facial features, but he's not. The muscles aren't moving. So you've got to really explain that to your grandchildren and others too, because otherwise they'll just think he's a grumpy old man who doesn't smile.
Got that as well? Yeah.
So you need to explain that to your family members, and we did explain it to our leaders of the choir as well. Yes. You can crack a joke or, and look out, and you might not feel that people are enjoying it. And yet some of the leaders have said to me, and then they're all great people that take us for the choir, and they've said, well, yes, some of the faces might not change, but we can tell that they're enjoying it from other parts of their body, demeanour and stuff. So, yeah, but you do have to learn about it. Otherwise, you're misreading and miscommunicating often, aren't you, love?
That's right.
Yeah.
And some of the other things that I've read about your handwriting going really small, and that that was the first time. Was that something that happened to you, Joe? Your handwriting changed?
It did, yes. I was still working, and I used to have to write patient reports, and it would start off legible, but after 2 or 3 words, it would get less and less decipherable. So eventually this scrolled away to a squicket at the end of the sentence.
Was that before you had a diagnosis, and did you think something was going wrong?
Oh, I knew something was going wrong. I was sure I knew what it was. Yes, it was before the diagnosis came, but yeah, I knew.
Must have been quite frightening, I'd imagine.
I don't think so. I think I was fairly well prepared for it, because for the previous maybe 9, 12 months, I'd been reading and found out as much as I could about it. Kept telling Carol I had Parkinson's disease, but she wouldn't.
Kept ignoring him.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it could be this, or it could be that, or your writing could be because of this, or, it's probably just a whole lot of little things, Joe.
Yeah.
Not either not wanting to believe that, or
But there's over 60 symptoms of Parkinson's disease.
That's right. And everyone gets their own
combination.
Yes. I mean, there are things in common. Everyone is slow of movement.
Everybody gets slow of movement.
And
what about the tremor? Is tremor a characteristic of Parkinson's? Because, Joe, you don't seem to have much of a tremor.
No, I've been diagnosed 13 years now, and I've got no tremor.
So, yes. We did read somewhere that about 60% of people are affected by tremor.
Yeah, that can be
But
right.
yes, but not everyone. Yeah. Although Joe used to have what he called tremors inside him, didn't you?
Shaking inside.
Shaking inside.
inside.
Yes.
I've never heard of that.
No, but people with Parkinson's would.
Yeah, they know. Yeah.
I mean, I can't explain to Carol even.
No.
But
But when he's talking to someone else who also might have experienced it, they have this understanding of what it's like. It's
And I have said that we're coming up to World Parkinson's Disease Day. Is there something happening in Toowoomba, or are you recognising it in some way with the group?
yes. Well, you'll have something on your radio, but yes, Toowoomba City Council has kindly offered to light up Victoria Bridge and back of the library area in purple on the day, and there will be some interviews with Parkinson's Queensland people about Parkinson's and what Parkinson's World Day means. So that will be on radio and maybe radio, but also TV and newspaper. I think they're the two main things we're doing, aren't they, Joe? Oh yes, and Toowoomba Prep has offered to light up their school grounds as well. It happens to be during the school holidays, but
Is there a symbol with the purple? Do you know?
Tulip.
the tulip.
The tulip.
Purple tulip.
And what's the symbol of the tulip for Parkinson's?
I'm not sure. I did know at one stage, and I've forgotten what the tulip means.
It's in there somewhere, in my mind somewhere.
I might have to get back to you on that. Now, as per usual, I'm running out of time, but because I wanted to talk to you about like the taxi subsidies that you can get and your plans for the future, maybe we could just cover that quickly. Do you think much about the future, or do you take every day as it comes, Joe?
I do think about the future occasionally, but not the long term. You know, I think about the future in terms of 3 months or 6 months. Planning what I would like to do. For example, we're sort of tossing up with going back to Tasmania at the end of this year.
Yes, trying to get some travel done. Yes, we're fortunate we've done a lot of travel in our lives, but try to do some of the things we can still do. Yes.
We're sitting here, we're surrounded by photos of elephants, rickshaws, lots and lots of travel, I would suggest, in your life. Is that possibly one of the things that you miss the most with the loss of mobility, Joe?
It probably is, but as Carol said, we've done an awful lot.
We're fortunate.
Very fortunate.
Yes.
To do most of our travel before PD.
Before PD took any effect anyway, yes.
Before PD. We talk about before and after, I would
Yes.
imagine. Now, Joe, is that an English accent that I detect there, or Scottish?
Well, I suppose I was English. Before I came to Australia, I was English.
Well, as an English person, if I was to ask you who your favourite royal is, who would you say?
Oh, God, Prince Harry.
Why do you like Harry?
Because he goes against the trend in box authority. That's my idea of how we can sort of say to people, there you are, that's me, stuff you.
Stuff you. Okay, very good. I like your philosophy, Joe. And what about the song that couldn't keep you off the dance floor? Before we got started, we were talking about some of the dancing that you did back in the day. Something called the Dashing White Sergeant. What was that?
Oh, that was a sort of a barn dance, or a square dance. I certainly couldn't replicate it now. No, I mean, it was just a few drunken blokes, me and my friends, used to go to on a Saturday night.
So was that just the name that you gave to each other, the Dashing White Sergeants?
That was it. That was
Yeah.
the
I
proper
actually
thing.
learned it when I was at school, when we used to do all of those sort of square dances, traditional sort of square dances. It's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
Carol, do you have a favourite royal?
I'm not really a royalist. Neither Joan nor I are really royalists. But I do. I've always admired the Queen. I think that she sort of, worked all her life at being a queen and what was expected of her. And I know that my mum, who turns 100 this year, is a little bit disappointed that she won't be getting a letter from Queen Elizabeth II, and is getting a letter from, hopefully, from King Charles. But I think Queen Elizabeth did a really good job.
Lovely. Well, it's been lovely to catch up with the pair of you again, and no doubt I will hear about on the 11th of April, World Parkinson's Day, and the progress, and hopefully I'll come back and see you in another year and see how you're going then. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Megan.
That'd be lovely.
I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM and you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan. We're talking Big Little Small Talk and we're talking Parkinson's today. I've got another pair of guests now on our Big Little Small Talk segment, John and Barb. Welcome to Big Little Small Talk. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And welcome, Barb.
Thanks very much.
Now, Barb, I understand that you have Parkinson's as well, which I am led to believe is more unusual for women to suffer from Parkinson's. Is that correct?
Well, from what I've read, yes, that's correct. But yeah, I've been diagnosed since 2017
Okay.
and still learning.
How do you feel that your progression's gone? Do you notice any progression yourself?
Oh, yes, you do, yes. I've had trouble with balance and that's always in the back of your mind. You feel, as far as the medication's concerned, you can certainly feel towards the end, before it's due for another pill, we'll call it that, you can feel that you're not as steady, not as able.
Mm-hmm. So that's your sort of indicator, is it? It's more to do with your mobility rather than any other feeling, any cognitive feeling or any memory or tremor or anything like that? It's more the balance?
It is mainly the balance, but I do have trouble with trembling, but that would be about all, I would think, that is constant. Yes.
And what's been the hardest thing for you, Barb?
Not being able to do what I really would like to do. Frustrating, particularly as far as gardening's concerned. I have these great plans, but then I usually have to pass them on to John to get done.
Well, that's how a marriage works, isn't it? As far as I'm concerned, one person has to be the ideas person and one has to be the muscle person.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And John, I believe that you were a bank manager, is that correct?
I was, yeah.
And Barb, were you working too?
No.
You were looking after the home.
Well, within our marriage up until now, we've had 13 shifts, so I don't think I had time to work.
What does 13 shifts mean?
John had 13.
Well, we moved from residence to residence.
Oh, shifts. I beg your pardon. I thought you meant 9 to 5. That was a shift. No, you moved. You had 13 moves.
Sorry, I put that the wrong way. Yes, we had 13 moves, and particularly when the children were smaller. I thought it was important to be there until they settled in, and they probably settled further more quickly than I did. And then once they went away to boarding school, I also felt it was necessary to be home when they were home. And we were fortunate enough to be able to manage.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And not a lot of people are. So, John, tell me about your role as a carer. How are you going with that? How much time have you had to adapt?
Well, I suppose the biggest thing was knowing that when you're aware of what Barb was suffering from, it was a shock, even though, as I think I said, for 3 years we tried to find out what was wrong with her. And once you got over that step, it was a matter of adapting and changing your lifestyle and doing what you have to do. Yeah.
And what did you have to change with your lifestyle? What sort of things?
Well, we tried to work through things like travel. Well, we've been retired since 2006. And we tried to work through travel and all that sort of stuff. And increased that when we knew it was happening, and then COVID came and stopped that and all. So, but it just changed your life completely. But you got to do it. You're prepared to do it, and I think we still have a very full life, but it's different to what it was originally when you found out.
Yeah. Are you amongst very many men who are carers, or do you find that in that caring role, it's mostly women? Or
Well, I can only speak for our group in Toowoomba, of course, but it would be a higher percentage of women that do the caring for the men than the other way around. But I don't see what difference that makes, really. If you've been in a partnership for 50-odd years, it just swings in and away you go.
you're saying all the right things, John. All the right things.
But that's our life.
Yeah. And what does the support group mean to the pair of you, Barb? How often would you meet up with other people with Parkinson's?
Well, we meet every week if we can, Tuesday at dance and Friday at choir. And we've certainly got a lovely core group of those two outings. We have lunch after dance, and then we have coffee and cake after choir. So we're very social. But I think, Megan, it's the fact that, we've met all these different people that we would never have met before. And they've all got a story to tell, and they all, to my mind, really cope well with their situation.
Barb, we were talking to Joe before about some of the early symptoms, and you said that it took 3 years to get a diagnosis. What were some of the early things that you noticed? I was talking about the writing getting smaller. Did you have anything like the loss of sense of smell or anything like that?
I haven't noticed a sense of smell, but definitely the writing. I was never well. It's always seemed to be something. And as I said to one of my GPs, I stand up. I'm not dizzy, but I feel, I would fall over if I didn't stand. But it wasn't dizzy, it was just nothing, really.
I suppose they were checking you for all Meniere's and sort of brain tumours and things like that, were they?
Yes, yeah. I can't complain about the doctors. They sort of sent me for most tests possible, and it was just lucky, really, that my GP sent me to a physician that immediately I walked across the room, he said, I know what you've got. But then he sees it all the time, whereas, I had a wonderful GP in those days, and I'd never say it was his fault because he kept trying. Yeah.
And for you, John, people talk about the mouse voice, and they talk about the mask face. Did you experience anything like that with Barb?
Not really. As far as the face is concerned, no. But as far as the voice, well, Barb's voice is definitely tapered off. As frustration with writing, as she said, it gets small and that sort of stuff. There's so many things, and everybody's got different symptoms within Parkinson. It makes it so frustrating to get answers and get the right sort of help. A lot of it sometimes is a bit hit and miss, I feel, personally, as far as what they're guessing that can help. But no, as Barb said, we've had good medical help. Well, Barb has, yeah.
And what did it mean to get a diagnosis? Did it mean that you could stop worrying, or you got the right medication, or why was it such a relief?
Well, the medication bit's always a bit of a gamble, because I feel that's what they hunt with change of medication and that sort of stuff. But as far as knowing, it was not good to know, but it was good to know that that's what it was, and hopefully it could work towards that without chasing other things.
And I want to talk about the dance, the Parkinson's dance, because I've heard a little bit about your choir, which is just so much fun, Parkinson. John, for you, do you participate in the dance, and how do you do the dance?
We'll sit here in a chair and get with them. No, we've got a fabulous girl that runs the thing, Sally. She's taken us on for 3/4 of an hour, and I say us because the carers that we know all participated. Even one bloke gets driven there, and his health person from Social Securities will join in the exercise and all that sort of stuff. And that's what it mainly is, exercise. It's nothing to do with twangle and dancing or anything really, but it's exercise done to a rhythm and structure. Yeah, and it's good, it works.
Yeah. And do you love the dance, Barb, or the choir, or a bit of both? Or is it the being able to share time with people who really know what you're going through?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Certainly enjoy the dance, and the choir certainly is a lot of fun. But yes, it is good to meet the group maybe twice a week, and also, yes, to know that somebody else is having the same or going through the same situation as you are.
You started to talk about your children before. How many children have you got?
We got 3, 2 boys and a girl.
And are they here in Toowoomba?
No, no. We moved around so long, and once they'd finished primary school, they went to boarding school, and then we couldn't ask them to stay with us, so they're spread out a bit now, but we certainly hear a lot from them and see them quite often.
Yes.
She's missed out on the 7 grandkids. I think become more important than the kids these days as time moves on. Yeah.
Well, I think that happens, isn't it? Yeah. For you guys, we talked to Joe and Carol about the future. Do you think about the future very much, John?
Oh, I think it's always at the back of your mind, you know. What do we got to do if something happens or when it's going to... But the thing is, of course, there's no firm pattern that you can work to. It's day by day, week by week. We've got our little duties we do each and things we do, and it works. I'm making it sound easy, but it's not easy. But, and as I said, and Barb said, the kids and the grandkids have been a great help. Either they don't live with us, they're on the phone all the time, and you're always interested in what they're doing, which gives you another focus.
Do you feel that you have to explain, say, if the grandkids haven't been for a while, and do you feel like you sort of need to, Grandma's moving around because of this or anything like that?
No, not really. I'm sure they all know,
exactly
except,
maybe
young Jack, who's still primary school, but and I think they just accept us, or accept me as I am.
Exactly.
They're always around, and if I need anything, they would always, help me. But otherwise, no, I think to them, it's just us.
That's right, Grandma and Granddad. What about the future for you, Barb? Like, do you worry about the future, or you just think, well, we're just can't do anything about it?
I think same as John, what will be, will be. Hopefully we're sort of prepared in our own way. But no, it's some people get cancer, some people get other things. I've got Parkinson's, and we'll see what happens.
If you could wish for a miracle, what would you wish for?
Stop shaking.
To stop shaking.
Well, that'd be one thing, to stop shaking. Probably to be able to do what I wanted in the garden again.
Back to the garden,
yes,
yeah. So are you much of a worker, John? If she gives you an instruction, are you all right to get out there and do it?
Well, she instructed me to turn 3 acres into a garden and everything out of Top Camp before we just shifted into town because of reasons of Parkinson's. But no, she's a pretty good driving force. She cracks the whip when it has to be cracked. I ignore it, but I have to ignore it.
Sometimes it takes a while.
Well said, the pair of you. All right, now I don't know whether you're much of a royalist, but Barb, if I was to ask you who your favourite royal person is, who would you say?
I'd probably say Princess Mary of Denmark.
Oh, yes, explain a bit more of that to me. I'm a bit partial to Princess Mary myself.
Well, she seems to have slipped into the role, and I'm sure it was very difficult for her. But she's brought those children up as you and I have brought ours up. We were in Copenhagen, and they said, oh, she goes past on a bicycle, and she rides to school with the children and whatever. And just, you don't hear much in the media. But what I have heard, yes, I admire her immensely.
Do you think it's because she's a bit stylish like you too, Barb?
Oh, yes, wouldn't you love her clothes?
And what about you, John? Do you have a favourite royal?
If I had to pick someone, I'd probably go for Princess Anne, I think. She's one that works and you never hear about it, but they tell me she's got the heaviest workload of any of them. And she's got a son-in-law who's a rugby player, so she can't be too bad, eh?
This is why I like to ask the question, because it's quite reflective of the person who answers and their values, and I think that's probably a really good answer from you. I've only ever had one Princess Anne before, and much the same sort of thing, the work ethic. All right, now you two, are you dancing people? Do you have a song that can't keep you off the dance floor, Barb?
Well, I like a gypsy tap, so I'd have to say if you knew Susie, like I knew Susie. And my mother used to play that on the piano quite a lot. Yes.
And you, John, is there a song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
Well, Sam, I used to dance all the time with Barb. I'd have to go along the same vein and say Irish Eyes Are Smiling. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. And now we dance in our chairs, don't
That's
we?
right.
We sit.
We do. It's a quite amazing thing when you see a group of people trying very hard to keep time to the music, and it doesn't really matter, but everybody tries, and that's the big thing about it. And as Barb said, the companionship it brings, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you both, and I've really loved hearing about your progress, and but I suppose the care for each other, I suppose. How long have you been married, you guys?
52 years.
Just 52.
Yes, only 52.
And that's when they say for better and for worse. And I suppose you wouldn't say that Parkinson's is the worst thing that's happened to you, but
No, but it's probably the designing thing. Oh, it's hard to say.
oh, like a
isn't it?
defining thing.
Define,
yeah,
define is the word.
sure,
And
yeah.
that's another thing. I quite often forget the word that I'm trying to put in. Yes.
Well, I think you seem as though you're doing beautifully well, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being my guest on Big Little
Thanks,
Small
Megan.
Talk. Listeners, you're on Big Little Small Talk on 102.7 FM Community Radio. And my third guest today is another person who has Parkinson's disease. We won't say a sufferer of Parkinson's disease, or do we say that, David?
No, what we say is living with Parkinson's.
Very good. David, you're a little bit younger, if I could say that, than the other couples. Is that correct?
That's certainly correct.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you had a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease?
I was diagnosed when I was 49 and I turned 65 last week.
Okay. And what sort of progress have you noticed over the years?
Oh, well, the radical change from pills to the brain implants.
Tell me about that. I don't know anything about that.
The DBS, deep brain stimulator. How they discovered it, I don't know. But I've got a little motherboard and a battery in the chest, a bit like a pacemaker, only the wires that then go up on the neck. Here I am pointing to it.
Hard on radio.
Hard on radio, yeah. And that goes to down between the hemispheres of my brain to the top of where the brain meets the neck, spinal cord, and subthalamic nucleus of the hippocampus, I think they call it. If I say it quickly.
That's right. You don't make a mistake and no one knows the difference.
Yeah. And it's currently got 4.8 volts on each side. And that reduced my pills from right at the maximum you're allowed to take to very small amounts.
Right. And what... I would imagine there's certain criteria for people who are sort of going to be suitable or eligible. Is that how it works?
There were 3 criteria when I had it. They're changing all the time, of course. One was that you had private health insurance. That's a big one because it's expensive. And that you were fit enough to endure 8 hours of brain surgery, and that you responded well to levodopa medication. And I've met those 3 criteria.
Right. Was that a frightening decision to make for you?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Were you at a point with the Parkinson's disease that you just thought you'd try anything? Is that how it was going, or?
Well, I'd been on the pills, which were fairly new ones, and they were going really well. So what was the question again?
Was it frightening to make the decision about going on to having the deep brain stimulation?
No, it just seemed logical to me.
Yeah. Was all the medication having any side effects, like making you feel sick or anything like that?
No, the Parkinson's made me feel sick before the medication.
Yeah. In what way? How were you feeling? I've not heard people feeling sick.
Yeah.
I've heard about them feeling depressed and, you know, all of that, but not feeling sick. So sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. I put it to people who may have been drinkers once. Think of yourself with a really bad hangover all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was that before you got a diagnosis, or that you felt sick like that, or
No, that was after.
afterwards? Yeah. How did you know that something was going wrong for you?
I kept tripping on the way to work from the car park, walking up the street to work. I kept sort of dragging my feet. You know. My mother had always said, "Pick up your feet, David, pick up your feet," when you're walking. So whether I had it when I was a preschooler, I don't know. But one night I was sitting watching TV late at night, and I was having a glass of wine, and my hand was moved very slowly. Again, this is no good for radio, but my hand moved really slowly to my mouth. And I was sort of watching myself move. I said, "Put that down, do it properly." And I put the glass down, and then I lifted it up and had a sip of wine. I thought, this is stupid, you better go and see a doctor. Something's wrong. I knew there was something wrong. And of course, I walked into the GP up the road. He just happened to be a fabulous GP, and walked out with Parkinson's.
Right, so that was that quick and easy, because Barb and John have talked about having 3 years before they got diagnosed. And how much of a shock was that for you? Did you know anything about Parkinson's disease at all?
I didn't, probably luckily. How much of a shock was it? I was pleased to know that there was something wrong with me. There was something wrong with me. There was a reason for the strange movements. You can put a name on it.
And David, have you always lived in Toowoomba, or are you a recent?
No, I've been here now for a year and a half.
And what prompted the move to come here?
Townsville got too hot.
Right, and do you have family here?
I do.
Yeah, you don't have a partner though, do you?
No.
How do you go looking after yourself? I mean, obviously you're fine, but...
At the moment, probably okay. I'm sharing a house with my sister. Now, we're going to enter some sort of transition period and stop being sharing and become a carer at some point, I think. So that's going to be interesting.
How does your sister feel about that?
Well, it was her idea, so I don't know. I'm still the naughty little brother.
How did you said about lifting up the wine and knowing that something was happening? Did you have any of those, any experience with your handwriting, or?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, you're writing and you start out, you think, well, I'm going to write normally, and the moment you start thinking about what you're writing rather than the actual writing itself, it just gets smaller and smaller, till you're down to almost just a line. And no matter how much you sort of try not to do it, it just gets small.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what sort of work were you doing, David?
I was a planner for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority.
Far out.
And
what planning? What sort of things were you planning?
we were planning to try and keep it alive. Failed. Well, not failed, but...
That's a topic for another day. A big topic too, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
And what was your background? Are you...
Environmental science.
Environmental science. And had you planned, when you came here then to live with your sister, had you planned on retiring then, or how did that all work?
No, I'd been rattling around different houses and places in Townsville for 5 or 6 years since the family broke up, and I came to Brisbane first, but Brisbane got very expensive very quickly. Toowoomba's nice. But that was the heat in Townsville.
Yes.
I just, as soon as I could get out of town, sort of affordably, I did.
Just looking at Townsville in the rearview mirror, were you? Yeah. The group here, the Parkinson support group, how much of that do you participate in?
Everything except the dancing.
You're not a dancing man, David?
Yeah, I am, but I foolishly sort of convinced myself that I wasn't as bad as I needed to sit in a chair and do line dancing yet.
Okay.
But I will.
So that's a sort of a line, is it? A line that you don't want to cross, that you've still got enough mobility? Is that... Tell me about it.
Yeah, that's it. I can still walk and... Well, I can't walk and talk at the same time. I'm still driving. So that's the next big decision I've got to make, because the licence is due to be renewed, and whether or not they'll give me a medical again, or whether I want a medical again, is very current at the moment.
It's a big step, isn't it? I know with elderly parents that the driving is a huge step.
Yeah, because you can't just jump in the car, race at the shop, come back and say, oh yeah, here's the whatever that you forgot to buy.
It's a loss of independence, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And with the NDIS or the funding programs, you can get money for transport, but it's not the same.
I wonder whether it would cost you less, though, really, compared to having a registration and, all the rest of it, maintenance on a car. And you think, if I just had a taxi subsidy. So is that how it works? You get taxi subsidies?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you get a... I think it is. I haven't got it yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But you get, what do you call it? Cab charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the choir? Do you participate in the choir?
Yeah, I love choir. Yeah, choir's good.
And what about the fellowship, David, of the other people within the group? How much is that important for you?
It's important. And it's good. It's good. They're very welcoming. It's fine. But as you pointed out, I'm a bit younger than most of them.
I remember when
doesn't matter.
I remember when I spoke to the group about 12 months ago, someone said to me that they'd come into the group and part of it made them feel frightened because they could see where they might end up in terms of people being worse than them. But it was so comforting that other people were going through the same sort of thing as them. Is that how you feel?
Often, yeah. Yeah.
I asked the other guys about the future. Do you think about the future or only increments at a time?
What do you mean, long-term future? Yeah, I do. But I don't know what to look at. I'm not sure what I'm seeing. Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's very existential. And the philosophical approach to it. Yeah, when you see without being disparaging to anyone, you see the old guys in the chairs and falling over and it does get a bit worrying. It's probably best not to think about it too much.
Well, we can do that sometimes too, can't we? Put things in a box and turn the key and think we'll have a look at that a bit later on when you're ready.
Yeah.
What about keeping your mind active? You're environmental scientists. Are you diligent about, doing the crosswords and playing the mind games and all of that?
Yes. Although I think I can detect myself. I find it hard to get the crossword out nowadays, whereas I used to be able to get it. That's the cryptic couples. But yeah. It's easy to be lazy. I had when I retired. Well, I didn't retire. I got kicked out because I couldn't drive anymore for the work cars. And I'd fall asleep in meetings. Wake up, the meeting would be over.
Never good. Just about the future and where you're going to be. Yeah. You just
cognitive.
Keeping your brain active. Yeah. Well, I'll ask you this question, David. Are you might not be a royal lover, but if I asked you who your favourite royal person was, who would you say?
A young Prince Charles.
Whoa. Explain. Please explain.
The young Prince Charles was very environmental and a bit radical in his town planning. Got into trouble with all the architects, the Royal Institute of Architecture. Once asked his dean at where he was, he's at Oxford or Cambridge. He asked the dean whether he could join the Labor Party. Apparently. So that's why, young Prince Charles.
I love that answer. I've never had a young Prince Charles before. I'm not even sure whether I've ever had a Prince Charles before, but a young Prince Charles, and I can understand your reasoning, and that's why it's such a good question. What about, well, I don't know that there would be a song that can keep you off the dance floor. You're not dancing in the chairs, but you are dancing. What's a song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
I've never been much of a dancer, but country blues generally, and electric blues music as a genre, but to find one precisely, probably go into some of the pop songs like Echo Beach, Martha and the Muffins.
Martha and the Muffins, that's right.
Echo Beach, one of the great pop songs ever written.
Love it. All right, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, while you can still dance, that's the motto. You're up there dancing to Echo Beach, far away in time. David, it's been lovely to hear your story today, and lovely to share your sense of humour and your dreams for the future, and I wish you all the best, and hopefully I'll see you again in another 12 months' time, and I'll see how you progress living with Parkinson's disease.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.